Today's adventure brings us to Buffalo, New York, and this is the historic Concordia Cemetery. Let's get started. So, Concordia Cemetery, for the longest time, was actually well on its way to being a neglected, abandoned cemetery. But, thanks to the efforts of volunteers, it has been fully restored, and it's actually a good thing, because there is some notables that we're going to attempt to find that are actually buried here in this cemetery. This cemetery is actually one of the oldest cemeteries in Western New York. And actually, this cemetery has a personal connection to myself. Now, let me tell you the story. It goes like this. My aunt used to live out here in an apartment, and underneath the neighbors were Mr. and Mrs. Bickle. Now, we used to come out here all the time when I was a real young child. I'm talking super young. My memories of that, we would go out there and I would get like at least $2 from the people downstairs and jelly donuts. Well, they lived on Coons Avenue, which is just in front of me. And right in their backyard, you could actually see this cemetery. And back then, as a young child, that actually terrified me. Now, I don't know if that laid the foundations for who I'm going to become today, but it was my first early impressions of cemeteries. So the first thing I'm going to do before we go on our safari and our hunt to find the notables that are actually buried here, like always, I want to go over and read this historical marker. It's really cool that this cemetery actually has been revitalized. Once again, I can imagine how this was not too terribly long ago when it was overgrown and well on its way to being forgotten. Once it got revitalized, it got this historical marker. So the marker reads, Concordia Cemetery has been placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2008 by the United States Department of the Interior. 2021. Now, this cemetery isn't very big, so it shouldn't be too hard to be able to find the notables that are buried here. I do have in my notes where they are located, so it's going to largely depend on how well this cemetery is actually marked. I believe a lot of the stones are actually upright stones. But I want to see what this is over here. Okay, so this is actually kind of a non-erected flagpole. It's pretty much an AMVETS marker. So what I really need to find out is exactly where I am and what section this is. That would help my cause immensely. You can see where some of the stones are pretty much still in need of some work, but it is early in the season. So the first part here is to figure out is exactly where we are. And that'll help our cause a lot. So this is the St. Peter's section. That helps. So, is anyone here? Okay. So we do have a notable that's actually here somewhere. So let's take a look and see if we can locate him. So it's going to be a flat stone. Hopefully, it's going to be somewhere along all this over here. This is definitely kind of what makes this somewhat of a challenge, is when it's a flat stone. And the grass actually kind of grows over it a little bit, makes it somewhat challenging. So I think to move this along a little bit, I'm going to actually just see if I can seek out this stone on my own, and when I come across it, if I come across it, I'm going to share it with you guys. These stones that are low to the ground are notoriously hard to find. So let's see what I can do. Perhaps the most famous stone of the tour is the Schmand family stone. And what makes it so special is that we believe it is the only stone in Western New York that has a curse on it. Louis Schmand, son of Charles Schmand, the proprietor of a Buffalo paint and wallpaper store, was only 17 when he was clubbed to death in Euclid, Ohio in 1877. The inscription, written in German, places a curse upon the murderer of this young boy, a message addressing the killer and appealing that he is brought to swift justice. It translates. Let's get a close look at the actual inscription. Okay, this is actually in German. It translates, "Here rests in peace Louis J. H. Schmand, born 27 October 1860, died 27 April 1877. To he who killed so violently by striking down cruelly from deep within my heart, you will be judged by a higher power. You are wished a curse on your soul." Pretty heavy duty stuff. Now, nowhere on this is that put out in English, but it's a very, very powerful message, and one you never, ever, ever really see. I've never encountered anything like this before. It's just one of the stones that makes this cemetery so unique. So here's a little something you don't see actually every day. Now, to me, this looks like a burial mound. It's hard to say how long it's been since this here was, since this person was interred here, but usually it's, regular ground and there's a headstone somewhere, and it settles. This doesn't look like it's settled. It looks like it was actually made like with old school rock. And to the right of it, actually, there's no way this isn't some kind of burial mound. So it looks like somebody was interred here, never got a stone, and nature just kind of took its course. So we go over this way, and this is a Civil War veteran. GAR means Grand Army of the Republic, and looks like this is Jacob Surlock. Kind of get a look here, see if we can. Company H, 1st New York, died December 1882 possibly. So I'm definitely dealing with some, this is crazy here, I'm gonna just kind of stop myself right there. So there's definitely some time constraints here on some of the folks that I'm hoping beyond hope to be able to actually find, because when it comes to the markers here, it's not great as far as marking the sections, except for that very first one. The reason I found the curse stone is because I know what it looks like. So there's another very interesting interment. There's two to three. So far I'm not doing that great. I found one. But there's actually a Medal of Honor recipient in this cemetery somewhere. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drive back that way a little more and see if I can at the very least find the upright stone that I'm looking for. So let's keep going. So it's kind of went off the rails for me here a little, because the areas here aren't necessarily marked the way I would like them to be. Well, this is actually pretty cool. I do like the old sections here. Here's another Union soldier, John Landhocht or something. So I guess I was hoping that they would legitimately have a military section. I know one of the fellas I'm looking for actually has a military type stone. That'll help. So some of the areas here also, they're still kind of saturated with water. That's no fault of the cemetery. That's because of the rains. This is definitely some kind of a family plot. Sorry about the crinkling of the paper. It's kind of windy out here. I'm definitely trying to make my adjustments. Looking to spot who I can actually find here. This cemetery has been revitalized, but it's not making it any easier to come across some of these stones, again, because the sections aren't easily marked. Some of these stones I'm looking for 100% no-brainers. But it's still definitely up my alley with these older stones. I wish I could exactly pinpoint where my aunt lived, because she was definitely on that side, because if I'm not mistaken, that's Coons Avenue over there. Oh, wait a minute. This could bode well for me. So let's see. This is actually wonderfully marked. Well, this is a miracle. John McHugh, Medal of Honor recipient, United States Army. Let's go this way, shall we? And Eureka! So this is the final resting place of Private John McHugh. He can best be described by the phrase, a soldier's soldier, as he was a veteran who served for most of his life, serving his country for over 38 years. He enlisted at least 10 times in the U.S. Army from 1861 to 1898, serving both in the Civil War and the Indian Wars. It was for his bravery at the Battle of Cedar Creek that he was awarded the Medal of Honor. The Battle of Cedar Creek, also called Big Dry Creek or Big Dry River, occurred on October 21st, 1876, in the Montana Territory between the United States Army and a force of Lakota Sioux Native Americans during the Great Sioux War of 1876. The Medal of Honor for gallantry in action was personally presented to McHugh by General William Tecumseh Sherman on July 18, 1877, at parade at Cantonment in the Yellowstone and Tongue Rivers, Montana Territory. He served his country until his retirement in January 1899. Seemingly a humble man, when he passed away May 28, 1910, there was no fanfare nor accolades. In fact, his death was not even reported in the news, and his death certificate records his occupation simply as Old Soldier. So, there's his original marker. There's his modern marker. Now this here is something I was hoping to find when I did my video on markers and monuments in cemeteries, when I was doing my little thing about veterans. Oftentimes you'll come across medallions like this. This one says GAR, GAR Veteran, which means Grand Army of the Republic, which means Union. Now you'll see these for Confederate soldiers as well, and you'll see them for Revolutionary War veterans, War of 1812 veterans, and such, Vietnam. You'll also see it for actually police officers. Well, this looks odd. If I didn't know any better, I'd say someone has taken up residence in this cemetery. So I would say proceed with caution. Okay, so my personal hunt goes on. So it kind of opened up to, I had to go through that fence to get to this little cemetery here. Basically, it looks like it's a Jewish cemetery. I don't think I'm gonna find what I'm looking for here other than some scenery, but I'm gonna go that way anyways. I'm not having a lot of luck. I found two of what I was looking for. So this is definitely a wild section of the cemetery. There's some fencing over there. Who knows if any bodies are like buried over there and not. See, I think this is a whole different cemetery. So I don't think I'm gonna find what I'm looking for here. So I'm going to turn myself around, kind of go back the way I came, and kind of keep looking. I'm not doing as great as I would have liked. Again, the big thing that's working against me here is the idea that none of the sections are marked except for that first one. and that was a flat stone I was actually looking for. So when it comes to cemeteries like this that were fixing to be forgotten to begin with, it's no surprise that it becomes super challenging to find the internments that you're looking for. I guess I'm just happy I'm able to come across this place and explore. Disappointing though that I'm not finding who I'm looking for. So what I'll end up doing if I can't find them, I'm gonna at least mention and talk about them. But I'm not gonna tap out exactly yet, because this one stone that I'm looking for, there was literally very little excuse why I can't find it. Because it's a newer stone and it's an upright stone. But when I'm also dealing with a lot of this, and that's not the fault of the cemetery, that is because of the never-ending rains that we've been getting. See, this is kind of like literally the only thing I have to go on a little bit on some of this. So I'm just gonna try, I should be able to eyeball this one. So a lot of these areas where the water is pooling, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if these are unmarked graves, honestly. Cemetery is, wow, that's kind of, that one stone over there just kind of lit up. I thought I had a car behind me. Of course, it's just a stone, the sun hitting, and nothing paranormal about that. I'm gonna kind of move over into this way. Basically what's turning into is, see if I can actually, no pun intended. Yeah, see, this has gotta be, that's gotta be an unmarked grave right there. Over this way. See if I can get lucky. No, not yet. My wife Alice C. Greer, Nee Gorner, thy will be done. So here's another Civil War soldier, actually, Grand Army of the Republic. Looks like he survived the war. Samuel Phillip, Company H, 12th New York Cavalry. Died May 6, 1871. So clearly I'm finding people, just not mind-bendingly enough finding the ones I'm looking for. I wonder if I checked over there. That's a contender. I wonder. Because based on what I'm looking for, I'm not seeing it anywhere near here. I would at least like to find 3 out of the 5 I think I'm looking for. Oh, that's the one I'm looking at. I wonder. This one should be a fairly easy one to find, but again, there's a lot what I'm getting here. Seriously, a lot of no. This is the Glass family. So I'm going to take this back over that way. I'm wondering Because it should be a newer stone. No, I don't think so. It's not the Rooker. It's not the Rooker monument. I can see that from here. I thought for sure it would be up over this way. Well, this is the Trinities. Anyone here buried in the Trinity section? No. It is a very picturesque cemetery, and it is right up my alley. But honestly, without adequate section markers, which I thought I would have, it's making a easy task a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. That's again, I also think if I had more time, I would actually be able to come across these. But these folks are buried here, so we have that. And again, I do plan on talking about them. So the cemetery is kind of like either side A or side B. So to properly do this, I would literally have to deep dive almost each and every stone to 100% come across what I'm looking for. And this one is a much newer stone. I'm kind of mind-boggled that I can't come across it. I don't want to totally tap, but I'm getting near the front of this cemetery again. I wonder. I'm going to go over that way. I mean, a lot of these stones I was looking for were super obvious. I wonder, something over there. Because this stone I'm seriously looking for is brand new. what I want to look at is over here. Again, there's nothing like a nice walk through a cemetery anyway, so this isn't a loss by any stretch. Because the one stone was supposed to have been a nice, clean veterans marker. The other one should have been brand new. But I am having the worst time finding it. Again, I am liking the walk through the cemetery though. But I'm pretty much right back where I started at the beginning. I'm not coming across what I'm looking for. This is just weird. I wonder. Let's take a look over there. We've got a lot of things like this happening here, which, not just that, but of course, it's a common thing to see in cemeteries. Let's go this way. Wondering. Of course, there's a small swamp right here. This one's completely unmarked, except for this is the Lander Memorial, so basic, well, not really. Odd. Okay, so sadly, I found, well, not sadly, I found two of the stones I was looking for, but the other stones I couldn't find at all, which was disappointing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually talk about the people that are buried here that I just straight up couldn't find their stones, and it's a little bit mind-blowing because it should have been a fairly easy find. So I couldn't find at least 3 of the interments that I was looking for, and I'm disappointed in that because they were kind of a big deal. I found 2, and in this scenario, I'll take any victory I can get. But let's take a time out to talk about the folks that I literally could not find so we could give them their proper recognition. Okay, William Moeller, born May 17th, 1828, passed away February 27th, 1895. He was a Civil War sergeant. He opened his eyes slowly and was aware at once of the acrid smell of smoke and the barrage of gunfire and thud of cannonballs. His ears were assaulted with the cries and screams of the injured and dying all around him. The pain was excruciating, and he was afraid of what he would see if he dared to look at his left arm. Slowly he turned his head and was shocked to see his mangled arm, blood seeping through his blue uniform jacket. He closed his eyes and wondered if he would ever see his wife Martha, daughter Elizabeth, and son John again, or if he should pray for death and take the pain away. It was August 29th, 1862, and this would be recorded in history books as the Second Battle of Bull Run. William Moeller, born in 1826 in Hesse, Germany, was only 34 when he enlisted in the famous Weidrich's Battery, New York 1st Artillery, in December 1861. In 4 months, he had fought the battles at Cross Creeks against the ferocious Louisiana Tigers, at Waterloo Bridge and White Sulphur Springs and other places in General Pope's campaign. After being injured, he was taken prisoner by the Confederates, and his wound was not attended to for 8 days until he was released back to the Union and admitted to a hospital in Washington, D.C., where his left arm was amputated. The same cannonball that destroyed his arm had also hit Lieutenant Jacob Schenkenberger, taking off one of his legs. Finally released from the hospital in December 1862, William returned to his West Seneca home and resumed farming. His descendants still live in Western New York. Laura Bennett, January 19th, 1889, to February 12, 1968. She was a women's world wrestling champion. Born in Fort Scott, Kansas, Laura was destined to be a knockout. Her mother, Nellie, was an accomplished woman boxer and a vaudeville performer, so athletics was in her blood. When Laura and her sister Crystal were in their teens, they and their mother toured as a vaudeville act known as the Bennett Sisters. Nellie retired in 1907, and the same year Laura broke out as a star and became only the third recognized women's world champion in history. Laura and Crystal toured the world on vaudeville stages, competing in acts of fencing, boxing, wrestling, and gymnastics. She became the Women's World Wrestling Champion in 1907 and was regarded as one of the first successful female boxers. She toured as part of Miners Americans, and their advertisements boasted a challenge of a $25 forfeit to all opponents she fails to throw in 15 minutes. Laura also trained some of the women who would catapult wrestling into the professional realm, including Cora Livingstone. Laura lost a match to her on October 10, 1928, one of her very few losses. Laura would continue to train women until she retired in 1933 at age 44 years of age. Later in life, she would break Guinness World Records set for parachuting from the highest altitude and most jumps by a woman. Laura married twice but had no children. She passed away at age 79 in 1968. The Mund children, they died 9/24/1907. At Concordia, where every stone tells a story, there are tragic stories to be told as well. And perhaps one of the most tragic tales is that of the Mund family, whose small children are buried in the St. Stephen's section, plot 11. When Fred Mund left his home on Clinton Street shortly before 7 a.m. on April 24, 1907, for his job on the wrecking crew at the Pennsylvania Railroad Yard near Fillmore Avenue, all seemed well at home. That all changed 2 hours later when he was surprised by the visit from his wife Bertha, who walked up to him and said, "Fred, I have killed the children. It was not right for them to live, and they're better off dead." He accompanied his wife back to the house, where he found his son Christoph, 8, and daughters Helen and Frida, 8 months old, dead, having been strangled by the mother. There was a history of insanity in Bertha's family, and she felt that it was better for her children to die than to live with the probability of going insane. The funeral service was held on September 28, 1907. 30 little girls attired in white lined up on either side of the doorway from the entrance to the church and sang, "Nearer, my God, to thee." The boy, playmates of Christ, the oldest victim of the tragedy, carried the casket up the aisle and into the church. A reported crowd of over 2,000 people jammed the church and overflowed into the street outside. Bertha was judged insane and committed to Buffalo State Hospital. She died on November 31st, 1935 at Mattawan State Hospital in Beacon, New York, and is buried on the grounds there. Fred died in West Seneca in October 1854 and is buried in St. Matthew's Cemetery there. Buffalo native Glenn Brooks was a choreographer and founding member of the Alvin Ailey Dance Company in New York City. In 1969, he appeared in the production of La Strada with Bernadette Peters. Other theater credits are Look to the Lilies, 1970, with Shirley Booth and Al Freeman Jr., and Raisin, 1973, with dancer-actress Deborah Allen. Glenn is also mentioned as a dancer in the book Alvin Ailey's Embodiment of African American Culture. Well, I really honestly thought I was going to be more successful in finding at least some of the stones that I was looking for here. However, these things don't always go as planned. I guess the one that I really wanted to find was the cursed stone, so I found that. I was hoping to find the Mund stone, but mind-blowingly, I can't find it here anywhere. So I went ahead and I felt I wanted to at least talk about those folks that are buried here. It was only fair and only reasonable. So My assessment is I'm really glad this cemetery was saved. I'm really glad it was put on the National Register of Historic Places so it can keep getting the attention and love that it so deserves. It's a really, really good cemetery, a nice place to walk amongst mostly old tombstones. And with that, we're out of here. So don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can be notified when videos drop. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. I would appreciate it. And we will see you next time.